So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope that everybody's in good health and has a great new year. This is my first time doing any event like this and live stream simultaneously. We've only done private events, and so hopefully people gain from this. And everybody here, I hope that you have something to take away from this. Now, privacy and protection, there's not any particular goal behind this, but what I notice is that in America, a lot of people don't necessarily know how to protect themselves and don't know what privacy laws are in place and what everything is that exists. And that's okay, because I didn't know before I even went to law school, and I had to spend a lot of money and time and energy to learn that, and that's okay. So everybody, we're going to go ahead and step into describing what it is that we're looking to do and how we're looking to do it. So let's go to the next slide. So first we're going to define privacy. So privacy is defined in a couple of different ways. There's the normal way that most people look at it as the Webster's Dictionary. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I do want you guys to notice a big difference there. The big difference is, the big difference is that we're looking at the legal definition versus the normal definition. So in legalese, we define it very, very differently. We break it up into a lot of big parts, and that's a big reason why very few people actually understand how to protect their privacy. It's broken into 4 parts. I'll go into those: physical, decisional, informational, and dispositional. Next slide. Now, privacy laws that are existing. Okay, so we have a few laws that are actually in place. Welcome. We have a few laws that are actually in place. There are expressed laws and there are implied laws within the Constitution, and there are other types of laws like common law that are actually in place to protect you. But express laws, there are 4 major ones, and the Privacy Act of 1974, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, that's the HIPAA agreement that we all sign if we're going to the doctor or the hospital or whatever the case may be, the Graves-Leach-Bliley Act, and the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Now, all of these were passed for our protection because America realized that there needed to be something. But before that, they also realized in 1791, when they wrote and passed the Constitution, that they needed to protect privacy and our assets in a multitude of ways. And they never wrote it out specifically, but they did put it into our Constitution and the Bill of Rights through the 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 9th Amendment. But what you'll notice is that we haven't really touched on privacy or protection laws in a very long time. The express laws are more than 20 years old, and the implied laws are more than 200 years old. So what does that mean? Why should we be more concerned with privacy today? Well, I'll give you an example. There was a day in my life where I had sent somebody $20 on Venmo. So I signed up on an account. I attached my bank account. All of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I have $1,100 drawn from my account. $800 came from my bank account, and at this time, $800 is a lot of money. Today, $800 is a lot of money. But what we need to realize is that privacy is something that we rely so easily on the world to protect us, but we need to understand how important it is. So privacy is only just a part of what we're looking to do today. We're going to go ahead and move on to protection. Now, the way that we define protection is to cover, shield from exposure, injury, damage, or destruction. Those are things that we know, right? We understand those things. But what we're really going to focus more on is asset protection and data protection, because today data is an asset, right? Data is more important than most people realize, and these companies that are collecting our data, like I was doing with our sign-up sheet over here, it's not that I'm looking to sell you anything, although I hope you do buy from me or somebody like me one day. But the goal is to improve people's understanding or companies' understanding of what your buying habits are, what your selling habits are, and everything of the sort. Let's go ahead and move on. Now, asset protection is not necessarily protected specifically in law. There's no specific laws that go to, hey, this is how you protect your assets. There are a number of tools out there, and there are a number of ways that you can do that. And many of these ways actually protect your privacy as well. But one thing that's super important to understand is that privacy and protection are not the same. And just because you have privacy doesn't mean that you're protected. And just because you have protection doesn't mean you have privacy. So those things we're going to go into a bit more, just so you guys understand. Next slide. So what are some of the priorities that we have? As individuals, We're focused, and this is a non-exclusive list, meaning that every person may have more priorities, and I may not know necessarily what you're looking at. But what I do want you to realize is that most of these are pretty universal for all of us. Privacy of personal data, like we were just talking about. Identity theft concerns and safety concerns, because what today means is that I am able to go onto the Dallas County website, the Tarrant County website, whichever one of these right now, and if I don't know where you live, but I have an idea of how your name is spelled, I can pretty much find out where you live. In fact, I do this often. And not because I'm trying to stalk you, but because I'm actually an attorney and I'm looking to find this information. So what that means is that people who are smarter than me are out there and may not have the best of intentions. So what you need to do is look to provide for your own safety. And there's only a few ways to do that in today's world. Further than that, we're saving for big expenses such as houses and cars and anything of the sort, retirement, college funds. For business owners, investors, we have separate concerns, but some things are similar. Protect against lawsuits. So a number of us are business owners, and we each have principles in place that try to provide for the quality of our work. But what we cannot always guarantee is that people will be happy with it. So that's where lawsuits come into place, and America is the land of lawsuits. It's not necessarily the land of freedom anymore, but that doesn't mean that we don't have ways to provide for that, all right? So lawsuits, in law, we call it the #1 wealth killer. You could have made $1 million this year, but somebody sues you for $2 million, and what happens? Now you owe $1 million. What are you gonna do? So privacy of client and vendor information, trade secrets, customer lists, things like that. Every person has private information. Every business has private information. Compliance, federal, state, and local. There are different laws that apply in every situation. Growth in sales or services, just as a general point, and duties to shareholders or investors. Now, doing certain things in law and doing certain things in life can sometimes conflict with those people who you're in business with, so you have to be conscious of those things. Next slide. So what you should do, when should you be most concerned about your protection? All right, so when should you really be looking to improve your asset protection? Or what are the good times or the bad times that may come up that are most important for you? Now, the 3Ds, this applies in actually auction houses and jewelry businesses and estate sales and so many different ways, but the universal rule is death, divorce, and debt. Now, in the same token, divorce and marriage are two sides of the same coin, but marriage is another point, and when you have children. So those big sections of your life are when you should really be concerned with your asset protection, because those things are going to change who you have priorities for and how you want to take care of them, right? Anybody have any questions so far? How do you join the live stream? You go onto either my Instagram profile and click on the link that's in my profile into the Sethi Legal profile, or you can go to YouTube and search for Sethi Legal, and it should find it. But yeah, so every situation is different, but for all of us, we're going to die, and unfortunately, that's the cold truth about it. We're born, so we must go somewhere, and we need to be concerned with how it's handled. Divorce, if we're lucky enough to get married, we may be lucky enough to get divorced if that's not right for you. You may be lucky enough to stay married, and that's a great thing, but every situation is different, and you can never predict it, so why not be prepared? And then debt. Sometimes we get excited and we buy things. I buy things all the time. I'm pretty sure I spent too much money on this camera, but that's okay, because I wanted to do this right for everybody who's watching right now, all right? Next slide. So there are certain things that we can do to protect ourselves. So general protection techniques. These are not specific to any person or any place, but everybody should do this, and these are the things that I'm constantly looking to do for myself. Encrypt and safekeep your sensitive information, such as your social security number, your date of birth, and your addresses. All those things are pretty important. And with technology and AI becoming such an important factor, you may not necessarily have to worry about somebody taking your identity. A robot could literally do that nowadays, and they could pose as you, and that's the unfortunate truth. Anytime you're selling any technology of any sort, make sure you cleared all your information. There are ways to find things and remove the backups and restore your information. Now, everything you've said to somebody, everything that you've saved, all the pictures, those can be brought back. So be careful and know how to take care of those things. submit removal requests for public information that may be outstanding on search engines. So this is something that most people don't know. But when you Google yourself, not that everybody Googles themselves, but I do it all the time. Why? Because I want to know what everybody, bless you, I want to know what everybody is seeing about me. Now, what they think about me is a different story. I don't really care. But what they see is going to affect how my business is run, and my business is my life, and I worked hard for this. So each of us need to be prepared with what the world is saying about us and the internet is saying about us. And if you don't like what's out there, you're welcome. Sorry, I can stand off the side if you can see me. So if you don't like what's out there, you can go to Google, ask them to remove this information. You can go to Yahoo, you can go to Bing, you can go to Apple, you can have any of these companies remove the information that may be prior stored with them, and they have to comply because that's your right to privacy. These are very, very important tactics, and you should be aware of these. Google has a very easy way of doing it. Just Google how to remove my information from Google. And then the last technique that everybody should use is use investment and entity techniques to remove public information, such as your home information, where you're living, things like that. Okay, next slide. Oh, we'll continue. Question?
How do you know if you're on all the search engines? Like, is there a source I can go to look and see if I'm on all the search engines?
Unfortunately, they're not connected because they're all competitors of each other. So each one is going to have different methods, and each company is going to have different ways to do it. Just like if you're canceling a gym membership, you may have at a very easy gym, it may take you 5 minutes, and other ones, it may take you 6 years. And so there's very different varieties of ways to handle this. Okay, now we're going to go into individual techniques. Welcome. So we're going to go into my specialty, trust and estate planning. That is definitely one of the key tools that are out there. They cost money, and they require you to learn things, but they are so important, and they allow you to have so much more flexibility in everything that you do that you may not realize today what you are capable of and what power you have in your hands just by being a citizen. The next tools that we have: insurance, life insurance, health insurance, car insurance, rental, or home. Now, what most people don't know is that life insurance can be an incredibly powerful tool for protecting your wealth. Most of us, when we're starting young, if we actually set up policies ahead of time. Now, I'm not an insurance agent, although people ask me to be one all the time. I'm definitely not, and I'm not here to sell you insurance, but I have some people who are great, maybe on this live stream, who could help you with that. If you're interested, I'll pass you on some contacts. Why not? But life insurance is an incredibly powerful tool. Let's say you're 22 years old, you're just finishing college, you just started a job, you want to sign up for a life insurance policy. You can set up a policy for your whole life, get your test done and all that, spend $100 a month, $50 a month, whatever dollar number you want, and you can get incredible benefits that you can use 50 years from now, and it only costs you $100 a month, right? So let's say 50 years times 12 months, what is that? 720 times 100. So you spent $72,000. That was quick math. Hopefully I was right. $72,000 on a policy that you can acquire you quite a bit of benefits. In my case, I was able to get something like $400,000, but I've only spent $72,000. Where did that free money come from? I didn't make it, but it was given to me. And all I got to do is just pay my bills. So same thing with health insurance. Health insurance is important. I don't necessarily think it's as beneficial, and you don't necessarily gain as many long-term benefits. But let's say there's a car accident. Let's say you get sick. Let's say something happens. This is a way to protect your wealth because a $500,000 surgery can max out at your $9,000 deductible if you're spending that. So just be careful and be cognizant. If you live a wild life, maybe it's something to look into. Same thing, car insurance. If you like to drive fast, if you like to drive slow, if you like to drive big trucks, or if you're around a whole bunch of horrible people like in LA. I don't have anything against people in LA, but they're not great drivers. So, just for the sake of understanding, it's important to have that. And then the same thing with rental insurance or home insurance. Those two tools are actually more important than you may realize, and you get quite a bit of benefits out of those. Furthering on, individual techniques, we have pension funds, IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, self-employed 401k, and defined benefit plans. Now, if you're owner of a business, you're only allowed to have certain one of these, and that being the IRA, Roth IRA, SEP, 401k, or the defined benefit plans. If you're an employee, you're welcome to have the first four. Excuse me. Now, why are these powerful? Well, just the same. You're allowed to put a little bit of money in. If you're smart about it, you can make a lot. I'm not saying that that's the right tool for anybody, and if you don't have the time or the patience to learn, maybe it's not right for you. But it is worth considering. Next. Now, as individuals, we get an incredibly powerful tool. It's called the homestead exemption. What does the homestead exemption do? It differs in every state, but because I'm in Texas, I'm going to focus on Texas. What it does is it reduces a certain amount of your property tax assessment. Let's say 10%, 15%, depending on where you are, reduces your total property tax by that amount. That comes automatically when that's your private residence. But what that does is, in addition to it, it allows you unlimited protection against creditors. Let's say somebody were to try to sue you, for example. The homestead exemption is going to allow you protection that blocks them from being able to come over your home. You can have $1 million house, you can have a $20 million house, and you can owe people way more than that, but they can't touch your home. They can't touch anything that's inside your home. And that's a beautiful thing about Texas. Other states have $200,000 limits, $500,000 limits, depending on where you live and what those property values may be. That may be beneficial and may be enough for you. But, excuse me. But for a lot of people, it's not enough. And you can also have 10 acres of additional unused land attached to your property. Your homestead, I'm going to read straight from here. Your homestead, which is the home you live in most of the time, is protected from most judgment creditors. A homestead can include up to 10 acres of urban property and up to 100 acres of rural property and 200 acres of family property. That gives you quite a bit of protection. That's a lot of land. And I don't know about you, but I would take advantage of that if I had enough land and money to pay. So that's definitely worth it. And in addition, if you're looking to sell your home and you're in debt or you owe somebody or a lawsuit is pending, you are welcome to do. There are certain types of exchanges that you can actually take the home value out of one and move into another. And that doesn't mean you're going to lose your house if you decide to sell it. You have up to 6 months to convert that, or you can put it into different investment funds. But when you put it into an investment fund, you no longer have that homestead exemption. So just keeping that in mind, that's incredibly powerful. So by owning your own home, you get the homestead exemption. Renters do not have this, and people who are living with others don't have this. So just something to keep in mind. Next slide. Question? If you're a co-owner, then you're able to take up to half or whatever percentage or part your ownership is in it. So every person, say for example, I own a property with somebody else, and I live in that property and that other person does not live in that property, I can only take up to half of the homestead exemption credit. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Next slide. Now we're going to move into business techniques. And this is, again, where my focus is trust, domestic, foreign, offshore. I didn't really go into it before, but I'm going to spend a few minutes here discussing what trusts are. Now, trusts are essentially make-believe. They don't really exist. But that doesn't mean that they cannot actually help you. I know it's surprising. But what really does exist? Our dollar doesn't really exist. It's valuable to the extent that we believe it's valuable. And just the same, I mean, we could have imaginary friends. I'm getting off the topic. But what my point is that just because it doesn't actually exist does not mean that it's not powerful. There are several different types of trust, and in the definition sheet that I had given out to the people who are live, I have a list of the different types of trusts that are here. Now we can definitely go into more detail, but we don't necessarily have time to do that here today. I may go into it in questions if you guys have them. But the two most important types of trust in general that overlook any type of trust, revocable and non-revocable. Now, those are two, more than anything else, that's what you should be understanding towards. So revocable trust and irrevocable trust. A revocable trust is a trust type that allows you to put money into it and then the next day say, no, never mind, I want to take it back out. What you can do there and why that's beneficial is because literally that is all you need to protect yourself from somebody finding your information online. That's all you would have to do is set up your trust, put your property into your trust. There are several different types of trusts, obviously, but for a land revocable trust, all you would need to do is sign up a document, transfer the deed over, and now it's no longer in your name. What you still get is that homestead protection, and you're able to transfer it back out. You're welcome to sell it. If you structure everything properly, you're welcome to do however you need to with that property, and you're able to live in it. So revocable trust, incredibly powerful. What that does not do is protect you. That does not stop creditors from coming after your home if you've taken a second loan against it or something of the likes. It will be blocked by that homestead exemption, but let's say it's a property that's not in a homestead. If you put it into a revocable trust, it's not protected. But that doesn't mean that you cannot protect it, okay? So we're going to get into that later. Foreign trusts are those types of trusts that are in Switzerland, Hong Kong, major countries that deal in money, but don't necessarily have any connection with the United States, okay? That does require FBAR compliance, which is a report showing federal banks and accounts of financial institutions. And then the same thing with offshore, okay? Let's say you have some money and you want to put it offshore. Everybody heard about offshore accounts, and they thought it was mainly for money laundering. Well, with the updated statutes and the way that the law has gone, you don't necessarily have to launder your money to use an offshore account. You can use it for a lot of reasons. And what real millionaires do is they'll take quite a bit of money, take it offshore, take that money and invest it into other countries. You only have to pay U.S. income tax on income that is received in the United States. So what that means is you can take your money, let's say I've been using $1 million. So let's say $1 million, put it into an offshore bank account or a foreign bank account. You're welcome to take that money, invest it into, let's say Chile. Chile is great for steel manufacturing and metal recycling. Okay, so you want to invest into a business there. You take that money and let's say that $1 million turns into $50 million. But you don't return any of that money back to you in the U.S. You don't owe U.S. taxes on that. You still have to tell them about it, but they can't come after that. And that's something important for everybody to know. And then in addition, insurance, business, liability, malpractice, rental or property, and entity formation. Those are all tools that are necessary to protect yourself. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So let's go ahead and move on to the next sheet. So we're going to talk about the types of trusts. Well, I'm just going to bullet them, but we're not going to go too much into them. The land trust, like I said, that's mainly for your property. Personal property trusts, such as your cars, your jewelry, or anything of the sort, you're welcome to put that into it. A testamentary trust, that's a trust that specifically made to deliver goods or property or something of the sort at the time of your passing. That's specifically designed for that. Inter vivos trust, let's say you want to give money to your child who is 5 years old, but that child is turning 21, and upon their turning 21, they are going to get whatever amount of money trust fund that you set up for them. You can deliver it specifically for how that works. Now, if you pass away, that's not going to change how the trust works, but you're welcome to do what you need to within your life, and you don't have to rely on it for your time of passing. Spendthrift trust, specifically designed to protect you against creditors. What that does is it takes the property out of your name, but it also takes it out of your control. They cannot come after your property if you don't control it and if you don't own it. And that's the key to everything. What that means is you no longer own your property or control your property. So if you give it control to somebody else and you don't trust that person, that's no longer your property and that's no longer your problem. But they can no longer come after it either. So be careful if you decide to do some kind of trust like that or give away your property, that you give it away to somebody that you know, like, and trust, or you're willing to give away that money without too much problem. Charitable trusts are beneficial because you can actually use that against your taxes. and those can continue to fund those charities for the life of that charity or for the life of you or for a specific amount of time. Medicaid qualified trusts. Now, a lot of people who are in the latter parts of their life have significant property, but they cannot have that property in their name so they can qualify for Medicaid. This is an incredibly important tool because let's say you have 2 houses and you have a bank account, but Medicaid means that you need to have less than a specific amount to qualify. Well, take it out of your name, put it into your trust. Now you can show that Medicaid, I don't own this much, give me my benefits. People do that all the time. And that's why this is so important, because we can control our money and do a lot with it. Next slide. Now the business types, okay? So businesses that are existing right now, sole proprietorships, it's not necessarily a business. People go into business all the time. People who own Etsy stores, people who own eBay stores, Amazon stores, people who want to come and wash your car. Millions of people out there own their business, but don't actually have an entity set up. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If your business is very low risk, that's fine. There's no problems, because you can do just about everything you can do with a business without a business. But what happens is, if you are a business owner who has somewhat significant risk, you need to protect yourself. And doing a sole proprietorship is literally the worst idea that you could do. There's no protection. Not at all. Basically what you're saying is, okay, I'm going to come out here and I'm going to mow your lawn, right? But for whatever reason, my lawnmower decides to go out of my hands, run into your house, and blow your house up. Bad example, but it's a possibility, because the technology that exists in today's world are changing, and we're no longer in control of everything and all the results that are going to happen. Now, if they're cutting grass with scissors and things like that, that's very low risk, but why would you want to do that job? There's technology out there, and there are a lot of ways to protect yourself. So why take on the headache, cut out the headache, and let's set something up? A partnership, also very risky, because what you're doing is you're taking 2 people. A general partnership means that, hey, I have one person here and I have one person here. Both of you guys say, hey, I'm going to take all these risks, and if you do something, I'll pay for it. If you do something, I'll pay for it. If you don't know that person, or if you do know that person, be careful, because that could mean the end of your business or the end of everything you've accomplished. So I never recommend a sole proprietorship or a general partnership. Limited partnerships, less risky. They definitely give you a lot more protection, but the structure of partnerships themselves are innately difficult and so uncommon in today's world that I don't tend to recommend those. We also have corporations. They're the least risky, along with LLCs. But the benefit of a corporation is if you're going to be in a larger size, or if you have different goals. An S corporation allows you to do what an LLC can, but there are state recording requirements, and you have to report to them, and you have to allow more work into your business. You're required to have more people in your business, and you'll also have to make an election every year to maintain that S corporation status. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If you have competent people in your business helping you, that's not a big deal. You gain so much benefit out of it that you can actually use it as a tool versus a risk. But with everything, there is a risk and there is a reward. And you lose things and you gain things. With a C corporation, just the same. You gain things and you lose things. A C corporation, what it's notoriously known for is its double taxation. What that means is it's taxed at the entity level. So your business makes $20 million that year. You're taxed at whatever that business makes, and then you're taxed at whatever individual income you make. That's not necessarily a bad thing either. Because let's say your business is at a particular threshold, and you're making so much that you don't want to give away everything that your business is making. So by splitting yourself from your business, your taxation, you're allowed to set yourself up in this tax bracket and into this tax bracket and limit your taxation. And it can help you quite a bit if you're making enough. If you're not making enough, then same thing. The LLC is the number 1 entity type of America. More LLCs are built today than any other entity out there. And in the US, LLCs are more powerful than just about anything out there. You reduce the requirements that you have to report to the government. You can also do your taxation the way you need to. and it's meant for unsophisticated people. That means if you make a mistake and you go to the state or the government and say, hey, my bad, I didn't know what I was doing. They're not necessarily going to say, oh, no big deal. They'll be like, okay, don't do it again. Let's walk through it. Let's fix it for you. So it's meant for the people who don't necessarily know what they're doing and can actually figure it out and work their way to it. So I hope that everybody's following what I'm saying. Any questions?
Yeah, how can you increase your protection by complying with the limited liability company with trust?
That is actually going to be the next point. So let's go to the next slide. So he asks, how do you combine your limited liability of an entity with a trust? So exactly what we're looking to do. The practical use, the effects of using the types of structures. The trust gives you privacy. Trust takes assets out of your individual name, puts them into a separate structure so that it cannot be easily found by creditors, government agencies, or the general public. Business entities separates legal ownership between business owners and the entity so that personal assets and business assets cannot be used together in the event of a lawsuit. Limits liability to the extent of the assets within the entity. Okay? I know that's very wordy, but what that means is you have something in this house and you have something in this house. If you get broken into in this house, there's nothing wrong with this house. So just keep that in mind. And then the best solution is a combination of both. If you want to protect your privacy and you want to protect your business. Things will be changing, and I'm going to tell you about a law that's coming out in the next year that's going to change how we approach this. But for the current administration, what the best solution is, using a business entity and a trust. So you're welcome to take your business and put it into a trust, or you're welcome to take your trust and open up a business under it. There's a lot of different things that you can do to protect yourself. Now, there are specific ways of doing it that are important that don't allow you to get rid of your property so easily, or there may be certain things that you have to do to avoid double taxation or triple taxation. Those are very, very important things to keep in mind, but the tools are there, and it's very, very important for each of us to know. Now, how does this all tie in together? The world we live in, AI, everything that's coming out, we have to be considerate towards what access information is out there. We have to be considerate towards which people are accessing our information, and we have to understand what we can do every step of the way to protect ourselves. Because as you see, the government's not passing new laws to help us. That doesn't mean that they're not doing what they need to do. That just means that they're more worried about their own things. And what that means is we need to be worried about our own things. So, you know, I hope that definitely helps people understand those structures. Next slide. Did that answer your question, by the way? Okay. So my most valuable tip is to hire a professional. And if it's not me, then somebody else. Get some help and learn how to do this stuff. Don't rely on just what you hear. If you heard me say it today, that doesn't mean that I'm the one who knows everything that you need to know about the world. Find somebody in your area. Welcome. Find somebody in your area. Find somebody who actually has the knowledge, and take yourself to school. Okay? If you have to pay for it, do it. But never stop learning, because the minute you stop learning is the minute you stop growing. And I've never stopped learning. I read books all the time. My mom made me read dictionaries as a child. She bought me new dictionaries every year. And so I thank her for that. I thank my brother for sending me to school. I thank my sister for schooling me. I thank my partner, Jazz. I thank all of my friends. I thank everybody who's attending. By doing this event, I've learned things today. And I hope that every person has gained something. So next slide. So if you need any help, feel free to reach out to me. That doesn't mean that this is over. We have question time, okay? So anybody have any questions for me? Well, thank you. Any questions?
Is it expensive to run a trust, or is it difficult to build and set up a foundation for a trust itself?
Not at all. It does require you to know what's in your document and be familiar with it. So just like you would with your own industry or whatever your job is, you have to learn a little bit about what's required, okay? The most important parts of a trust, there are three parts of a trust. There's the settler, the person who creates the trust. There is the trustee, the person who controls the trust. and then there's the beneficiary, okay? You can serve as all three. All three are very, very important, but just because you don't have a settler doesn't mean that your trust fails. Just because you don't have a trustee doesn't mean your trust fails. If you don't have a beneficiary, then your trust doesn't mean anything, right? That's more important than anything. So you need to make sure that you have a beneficiary that's actually useful or existing or something of the sort. But creating a trust is just as simple as signing a document. It's not public, and that's why it's private. It's not public because it's private. You don't have to show it to anybody. The only people you ever have to show it to is when you are recertifying your homestead exemption. So you have to take it to the state or your lawyer. If they know what they're doing, they're going to take your trust documents with them. When they file their deed, they're going to actually show that to the clerk and say, hey, this is under ownership of this person. That's all we have to do. And you can create several trusts, or you can create several different entities to potentially put different properties in. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. But it's, like I said, it's not very difficult. It's just signing a few documents. I can do it. Question?
So as an employee, if I break my non-compete with a company, can they sue me?
It depends on the industry that you're in.
Let's take the medical field or veterinary field.
Okay. So for those of you who can't hear her, she asked if I break my non-compete, can my company sue me? The medical field is a very difficult field because it's hard to tie you down to that industry. Now, if you're taking, or let's say you're in the medical field and you're doing research, you have proprietary information that's more valuable that you may have and take with you to use against somebody else. And in that case, it's much more enforceable than it is in other situations. But take, for example, you're just a doctor. Not that doctors are not important, but doctors who work in the hospital, you've learned those skills outside of the hospital, and you learn them on the job. But nothing that you're doing is completely private, right? Nothing that you're doing is completely new. That hospital may do something that's unique from another hospital, but that doesn't mean it's a secret. And if it is a secret, then that's a bad thing, because no hospital should be surprising you with random techniques, in my opinion. Does that answer your question? Any questions otherwise?
If you're getting like stock options from like your employer,
Right.
things like that, is there a way you recommend setting that up?
Absolutely. So you can actually take your stock options and your investments, put them into a separate trust. Okay? You can put them into a trust, and what you can do against that trust, or you can set them out into even a business, right? There's a few different ways, and depending on what you're like wanting to accomplish, you can put them in your business as assets, or into your trust as assets, or a combination of both. And what you can do is actually take that investment profile and take a loan against it. You may not know that, but you're welcome to take your 401k, your investment plans, your pension, anything that you put into an investment account. Let's say you've got $40,000 set up. It grows to $50,000 the next year. Well, you can take a loan against that $50,000. You no longer have that penalty risk of not having your money, but you can play with that $50,000. It's a loan. You don't pay taxes on a loan. You only pay taxes on income. So that's what a lot of business owners do, especially when they're looking to protect themselves. Let's say somebody in a business has money that they owe, and that business, whenever it pays out to that owner, that money goes to the judgment or goes to the government. Okay, say for example, I'm just going to break it down for you, okay? So, I just had to set that down. That's not for dramatic effect. Okay, I own this business. I own company A. My company's doing fine, but I still get sued. What does that mean? My company assets cannot be touched, but what I get paid out of my company can. So if you set up your company in a specific way, it's called a charging order. If you set up your company in a specific way, you can say, okay, lawsuits or any judgments or any creditors can only come after my distributions as an owner of the company. Okay, there's two different things. You can take payment as an employee, or you can take it as an owner distribution. But if they only come after your distributions and you don't take any distributions, that means they're not getting any money. But what you can do is loan yourself money from your business. Use that money and pay it back. you're still welcome to do that. They're going to hate you, but you're welcome to do that. And there's nothing illegal about it. You do have to pay that money back, but if you go bankrupt, then you're bankrupting yourself, and it's your business. So what's going to happen? You do pay interest to yourself. You could take a no-interest loan, just the same. It doesn't necessarily hurt you, but it doesn't necessarily help you. And if you're really just trying to avoid creditors, then it doesn't necessarily affect you. But to legitimize it more, maybe you want to. Maybe you want to help your business grow. If it's losing its asset ratio, then maybe it's better to do that. But that's an individual choice. It's not required.
Isn't the interest that you're paying yourself deductible from the other end?
It depends. Certain types of interest are deductible. Mortgage interest is deductible. Student loan interest, if you own it under, like if you're making less than a specific amount. If you're paying certain interest, such as like a home equity loan, those things are. But most of the time, interest in general is not, because credit card interest is not deductible, right? So if you're using this, and depending on how you take it and use it, it may be, but that's all depending on how smart you are about how you borrow the money. So, any other questions? No questions from here? Anybody?
So revocable trust
Uh-huh.
is supposed to help protect all of your things, or it's supposed to make it easier for after you pass away for your loved ones to be able to take
Right.
items. And keep hearing this word probate.
Right.
What is that, and what does that entail?
That's a good question. Now, estate planning as a whole is a totally different section. And on the survey, I actually asked, I wanted to see who would be interested in learning about estate planning, wills, and trust a little bit more for the purpose of avoiding probate. So probate is the court system. It is a specific type of court. Now, funny story, I'm just going to tell you guys this, and I don't know how many people know this. Okay, probate, the word itself, I thought it meant probation. Okay, before I went to law school, I thought it meant probation. I'm out of the frame, thank you. So when I went to interview for my first internship, I went to the Dallas County Courts, and they said, interview for the section that you want. I had missed every opportunity to sign up for anything that I understood, so probate was left. So I went into that interview, and I was like, oh man, I love probate. I've been wanting to do probate all my life. No idea what probate was. I didn't even know at all. So when I get on the job, I'm like, what do I have to learn about? Like, I had no idea. I probably should have researched it, but it had just started 2 or 3 days later, right? So I didn't have very much time to really get my head around what I was getting myself into. But it was a lot of fun, and literally that's probably why I'm doing this today, because I learned so much during that experience. So probate, as a general thing, that is a specific court that handles passing away, people passing away, properties transferring at that time. They also, sometimes depending on the state you're in and the jurisdiction, deal with mental illnesses, and they also deal with people who are hospitalized for disabilities. But for the most part, you're really talking about passing away and mental illnesses. And in Dallas County, Collin County, Tarrant County, Denton County, that's really what it surrounds. Okay, so probate, by the nature of not having a will or having a trust, you're going to go through probate. That means anything that you have is going to go straight into the court system. You have to, whoever's going to, let's say, I'm just going to talk about John and his wife, Susie, okay? John and his wife, Susie. Hopefully nobody knows people by that name. This is not triggering, all right? So John passes away. Now Susie is still living. They didn't have a will. So what now Susie has to do, if she's able, is to go to the court, and you have 4 years to go to the court. 4 years from the date of the passing to go to the court to probate the assets. Okay, so that means you have to take a petition to probate as an executor of the estate, okay? Long story short, I may have mixed it up, executor, administrator, whatever the term is, you have to take the document there, you have to get approval from the court. Now you have to go and get an intense asset list. You have to do an accounting of everything that's in that estate. That means the house, the clothes, the dogs, because dogs are property. You have to go in and put a list together of everything that may exist. You have to reach out to all the banks. You have to reach out to all the life insurance. You have to reach out to everybody. Now, certain things pass outside of probate, like life insurance and banks and things like that, but they still need to be aware of it, because if you have control over that money and you're spending somebody else's money without their notice, that means you can go to jail. So you have to go in and do all these different things and set people up, or set that accounting up, and then go to the court and say, okay, this is what we have. Can I take care of it? Can I transfer things? Things take a long time. But what that does is that opens up the door. Now you have Susie and John. They had 2 kids together, whatever their names are. But John, from a previous marriage, had 2 other kids. Didn't tell Susie about it. Didn't even know them. Didn't have any, now you have Jerry Springer's situation. That's my daddy, right? And then they come into the court, and I've seen this. It happened. Okay, they'll come into the court. They say, no, you can't do this. And then the judge is like, please escort them out. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And so this was more fun than any other experience. But what that did was that added another year and several $100s and maybe even several $1,000s to the situation. And where does that money come from? Everything that John owned, okay? The court appoints an attorney. The court appoints an ad litem. The court appoints a lot of different people responsible for taking care of that estate. And now what that person has to do is pay for everything out of what they might be getting from John's estate. And if these 2 kids are real, now everything that was supposed to go to the wife and the 2 kids now goes to them as well. And so it's much more of a headache. What you can do by setting up yourself with a will or an estate plan or any variety of documents that are out there, but essentially the will and the trust are the 2 most powerful, you can write down, hey, this is where I want my things to go. And if these 2 random kids come in, they're not in your will. Now they can contest it, and they could cause more problems, and they can delay things. But at the end of the day, they disavowed them, and they disinherited them. So whatever that document says, as long as that person was sane when they were signing it, that's how it goes. But how do you avoid going to court altogether? Just the same. Maybe you don't want to go to court at all, right? You don't even want to have to allow for these people to come in and challenge you. Well, you put it all into a trust, just the same, right? So just like you're putting your property into a trust, just like you're putting your house, your kids' clothes, and all these different things, you don't put your kids into a trust, but you know what I'm saying. Everything that you're putting, don't put it into a will or into a bank account or into anything else. Put it into your trust. What that does is automatically at the time of your passing, or at the time you say, okay, on January 15th, 2045, I want my property to go to this charity, for example. It can go specifically to that charity. If that charity doesn't exist, it'll go to somebody else. If everything's still intact and you still have money in that account. So there's a lot of different ways you can actually avoid probate, but that is really the biggest and strongest way. You can also avoid probate by not having anything at all, and nobody wants to do that. So.
Jabesh has the question, which is better, a will or a trust?
A combination of both. You should always have a will as a backup for what you don't put into your trust. So that's called a pour-over will. So if you do decide to put a trust, you have one for your property, and you have one for your personal property and one for your land. You could actually, and you decide not to put your cars into your trust. What's going to happen is that you have to go into probate for those things as well. So everything that you've written in that will is going to go as it should. So you should always have as a backup.
If you have a will and you don't have a trust set up, how often do you recommend updating it?
If you have a will only, then I recommend every 10 years or upon a big life event. So like I was saying, the 3 Ds, death, divorce, or debt. Once you acquire big debts, you can adjust your plan, or if you get married or have children. Huh? Then you can't do it. Question?
So if you were talking about like life insurance policies earlier, right?
Right.
So on those, could you, like you were saying, going $50, $100 every month?
Yeah,
Could you eventually like take a loan out on it and
absolutely.
start a business, and would you have to pay taxes and stuff on that?
So if you take, let's say you have, okay, he's asking if you have life insurance, you have cash value built up, or if you have benefits built up, depending on your company, you're able to take a loan against it. Sometimes you are. And just the same, it's not income, it is a loan. So you don't owe any taxes on anything that you gain from that. But if you invest that money and you pay that, if you invest that money and now that, whatever that amount is, $50,000 to $100,000, say $100,000, take that money and now that's generating a monthly revenue of $2,000 to $3,000, you owe taxes on that income. But once you've returned that base to your life insurance, all of your assets are separate. And so anything you have that you've not paid taxes on is going to be taxable. But that is a big benefit to have. So you can take money, and actually you're able to take cash value out without any rewards, and that can actually be considered income as well. But you can also take that, you can avoid it by doing prepaid taxation on that by investing your cash value into a Roth IRA. And there's a lot of different ways. Avoid taxation, and then now you have interest-free and tax-free money. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for thank you for coming. I hope that everybody gained something. I didn't go into everything. Obviously, I don't know everything that there is to know, and I can't explain everything in a night, but I'm really glad that everybody came, and I'd love some feedback. So tonight while you're here, please grab some snacks because I got so much. I don't know what I'm going to do with all that. Everybody who's not here, you can't enjoy, but please take it with you. But what I do want you to know is that everybody has a chance to learn. Everybody can learn something. I'm here to teach you. Even if you don't do business with me and you really need the help, I'm here to help. Ideally, you do hire me, but if you don't, hire somebody else. Thank you.